enjoy this conversation. Great. So here you are, our guest speaker of today's episode, Sandra Tan. She calls herself Signifluence Coach. Yes, and she's also expert of digital marketing, personal branding, public speaking. And she is not just limited to these four areas, ladies and gentlemen. She is a founder and director of Steam Communication, a consultancy for branding, digital marketing, and communication with more than 30 years experience. From her picture, you can't judge her age. She's so young and vibrant. And Sandra is in quest to help others find signifluence, which she calls a movement that encourages people to find inner significance and external influence. And Sandra is a self-motivated individual who believes in imparting values, knowledge, and skills to the next generation. So she is on a mission. She's on a mission of impacting human lives. She's on a mission of transforming human lives so that we all become a better version, so that together we serve the community, which is very much aligned with the Empowerment Talks purpose, the why. We together, through this platform, we want to make an impact to all our participants. In case you are watching on our YouTube channel or any other social media, I welcome you again. And I invite our guest speaker of today's episode, Sandra Tan. She has joined from Singapore. So please give a huge round of applause. And with this, I request Sandra Tan to please take it over. You can have the conversation with all of us. Over to you, Sandra Tan.
All right. Thank you, Kanan. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I think I want to say hello to you from Singapore. It's just about 45 minutes to midnight, so my eyes are still bright. And I'm really happy to be able to share with you a very important part of me. Just looking at the word signifluence, you know, it comprises two important factors, and that is significance and influence. Now, I've joined it together because I think they both need to go side by side, okay? And I think particularly in this long haul pandemic, yeah? We've gone through the surprise, the shock, the denial, the pain, the grief, you know, we have reached almost a 7-month turn now. And it's time to really make plans and really see what we can do. And I'm proposing that we adopt significance as part of our lives, combining knowing what's significant in our lives and planning to influence others. So I'm in a personal mission to help people see through that. Um, but somebody asked, of course, you know, isn't significance in a higher up hierarchy of Maslow's hierarchy? I say, yes, it is true. It is true. I'm not talking about merely finding a hobby or a passion, not merely that, but really finding skills that can last us through and passions that we can develop to benefit the community. So I'm going to share with you my slides for this evening so that you can have a better understanding of what I mean. All right, so my slides are coming up here. But significance, it is a mouthful, isn't it? It's a movement. At the end of the day, it's a movement for people to discover what is truly significant in life and in work, and then to influence others to make a difference. Well, what are the characteristics of significance, right? And there are some. Firstly, the person has to be motivated. You know? Being significant means we move as a motivated person. And then we invest our time and energy in significant projects or businesses. And then we aim to influence this love of life to others. Well, to me, ladies and gentlemen, how all these started was this: greater than any disease or destruction. And we have a lot of that in right now in the whole world. This is the pandemic of deception. Deception of the mind, deception of a low self-worth, and the lack of self-beliefs. You know, so many people have been laid off, so many people have been depressed, or so many people have died for the matter. And we are led into a deep spiral that we are actually losing ourselves. And then we keep hurting ourselves by making ourselves low and thinking that we're not good enough, etc. And this in itself is a deception. So why I started Significance is simply because I think there's a need to remove the deception. And I'm not just talking about fake news, I'm talking about inner self, right? That we are deceiving ourselves, that we're not good enough. And this is what we aim to change, to be a better person, like what Kangen said. At one point, I said, let's have an S quotient, a significance quotient, where we can measure ourselves whether we are motivated to manage ourselves, to see whether we can stop deceiving ourselves, to measure ourselves whether we are investing in significance, and whether we are influencing others. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me share with you my personal story. It all started out with a scenario where a lot of people are familiar with, and it's called the Great Retrenchment. When I was retrenched at the age of 50, yes, when I was 50, I was given a beautiful gift called retrenchment. Okay. And what do you do when you're retrenched? Okay. You have all those emotional feelings and awful self-esteem. So the first thing practically we had to do was job search 101. And then it went on longer, 202, 303. You improve your resume, you go for talks like empowerment talks on how to improve your CVs, etc. But it was on and on. Now, I'm sure some of you can beat me to this, but at that point in time, it was about 4 to 5 years ago, I wrote 150 letters, okay? By email or by hard copy letters, all right? And the common thread that came up was this: lady, you are overqualified. That's a nicer way of saying, we really, really can't afford you. We really can't have you. And by the way, you're kind of old too. There you are. So I felt like I was squeezing myself into a small door where there are many, many players, and I was just one of them. I knew I had all the experience, but no one wanted to listen to me. What was my success rate with 150 letters plus plus? Well, I had about 15 interviews. Some were successful, but it didn't last long. And mostly they were not successful. And I would say, really, this is a real stage. And for my case, it was not only the skills that were not as relevant, but it was also a case of ageism. Now, let me give you a little backdrop, yeah? It's not like a rags to riches, no poor to rich or weak to strong case. I was just an ordinary government service person, okay? Which probably, as I see it now, was something which I had to change. Nothing wrong with the service, but it made me very sheltered, not so exposed to the private world. And when I did go into the private world, there you are, I was faced with retrenchment. So what happened to me was I was in a major downward spiral. Now, when I talk about downward spiral, it's not just a mere description, okay? The emotions that came from it were mega, okay? And it's very, very hard to reach out. And for all of you who are going through mental health issues, I really suggest you go for help, because it is a very difficult spiral. But the worst thing that can happen was what happened within me. And that I kept thinking that I was not good enough, because people said I was overqualified, but really they mean, no, we really can't have you. And you can imagine the kind of a downward spiral I went. It went on for a good number of years, ladies and gentlemen. And the only thing I want to say is I was thankful I didn't have to resort to medicine. But today, of course, I've gone through that, okay? Now, I forgot a very important part, and that is, of course, I went through a headhunter. Now, the greatest shock I had from a headhunter was that he said to me, my dear Sandra, I think you should stop looking for a job now. Stop looking for a job. I had a great shock. I said, which headhunter is this that he doesn't want to even try to help me? Well, this headhunter was assessing the value I had. And he was assessing that perhaps at my state and at my stage, it was better off that I started entrepreneurship. And so that is why I say that retrenchment was a gift, unknown to me at the point in time while I was going round and round and round and round in a downward spiral. So the first thing I did was really to embrace inner significance. Now I call it inner significance, but it was a process, okay? I describe it evaluating inner self. And what is it in the inner self that I evaluated? I think if a natural person cannot handle, all right, a depression or downward spiral, then I would suggest to go for the spiritual. And I think when we go into the inner chambers of ourselves, this is when we can get connected to our own maker. And this is a key step. After the spiritual connection, I went to a connection with myself to realize and say, hey, look at me now. Okay, look at my state. I don't want to affect my children. My children were just like doing the best to cope with mom. My husband had to try his best and ask the right questions daily. He cannot ask me, can't you do this? Aren't you free? This is a very sensitive question, of course. And I had to connect with myself and say, hey, let's overcome that. Then I gathered that my own mind was toxic to myself, that it would be better if I had connected with positive people. And so I searched around my closest circle. And sometimes when you need a friend, indeed, surely there are no friends indeed, but there were some who were truly friends indeed. And they became my closer circle. And they were the ones who knocked my sense out and said, hey, come on, Sandra, pat me on the back and help me to move on. But more importantly, after evaluating, I decided to connect with social media and in particular LinkedIn. And this is the wider circle. So if you look at the progression, there is some form of progression there, from spiritual to self to positive closer circle, and then to a wider circle. But eventually the point here is to remove the toxic mind, and I would even say the toxic literature. And then importantly, I examined my inner strength. Well, since the headhunter had that trust in me to say that he thinks you can make it as a consultant, my dear, why don't you give it a try? And so I did. And when I looked at my own inner strength, I said, hey, there's one thing I can do. I can talk and I can write pretty well, okay? So I said, why don't I go back to my core strengths? And it started Esteem Communications. So well and good, I started designed my own, the process of learning how to design my own website, design my logo, get it all printed out. It was a journey in itself. And so that's what I did. But for 1 whole year, I didn't have clients because I didn't have strong networking. So that was not enough too. And so the whole year, I plodded on and went on a major learning journey, okay? So I'm in the process of finishing my ICF. I went to NLP. I went to digital marketing, Google Analytics, okay? That was my paper chase. And I think that was even more important than the MBA, frankly speaking. And when I did all that, and when I displayed my skills to the world, I found that actually I created a brand for myself. So I felt I was quite good at personal branding, and I could help people with that. So I said, okay, after evaluating inner self, and examining my inner strength. The third thing was I needed courage. You must remember, I'm an ordinary girl who worked in the government service. I said, you better kick out of your circle, Sandra, and just move out. And I went on an offensive strategy. No more waiting for people to offer you the job, the opportunity. I had to create that opportunity. And that had to come with a lot of courage. But it's not always that people will receive your courage just because you were ready. And so I went on a Sandra Claus mode, okay? And this is what I did. I volunteered in charity work. I volunteered in training, writing pro bono, volunteered in speaking, webinars, volunteered in mentoring. I did a lot of that, okay? And I can tell you, from there was where I got all my business. So there's a beauty about the paradox in life that if you actually care to give to people, you will receive. Very, very interestingly. So I want to say, if you're ever in this stage where I was, okay, and I would suggest that you evaluate your inner self, examine your inner strength, and just get out and get moving. And nobody receives you, volunteer. Everybody will love a Santa Claus. And true, I called myself Sandra Claus. As part of the whole Signifluence, when I was a bit steadier, after I did all the work and business did come in, particularly in training, it came in nonstop. And I want to say that in this season, when people are struggling to get jobs, especially their training schedules or the training bookings were all canceled, I want to say that I've just completed my 101st day of training. I'm moving on my 102nd, and I should be booked for another 30 days or so till the end of the year. So in a time when people were struggling, I began to thrive. But it wasn't like automatic. You see what I'm trying to say? I had to learn a lot of skills before that. And let me just go on to say, what skills did I learn? Particularly future-ready skills. You see, I was a communications person for many, many, many years. And I would say it's about almost 2.5 decades I was in comms, right? But I was also a manager, right? I directed people to do this, directed people to do that, to the point where I actually did not have a skill. I only had the leadership and managerial skills. Nothing wrong with that. But in crunch time, it is those skills that are needed. And all those juniors before me, they have jobs all the way for a very long time, but not me. You see, when I evaluated the skills I had lacked, I realized that digital marketing was one key component. And I really invested myself, not only in the knowledge, but in the practice of it. I ran an e-business for myself so that I could know the jargon, the process, the people, and all that just gelled in. And today, that is feeding me today. Okay, I'll go back now to my screen. So when you have something that's inner, only you benefit. But when I discovered that I wanted to give of myself to other people, I went into coaching and mentoring. And yes, this is my class, and I make them do things like this, a heart shape. Yeah. And I even went to a parent talk to share with them, my own journey as a parent. So the more I gave, the more I was able to mentor people. And in itself, there was a sheer deep joy. Because my mind was no longer navel gazing, I was actually outward looking. I also found out that with the fact that I could write and talk very well, so I said, why don't I become a voice of influence? And this is a note for those who are in transition or unemployment. There are places who need people to write posts. There are companies who say they can't invest themselves in social media. Would you like to help me? Yeah, go find them. And the places where they will still accept people to write articles because the consumption of the social media is so huge this period of time. So places like medium.com, for example, yeah, and I'll write that in the chat later, they are accepting. And some of you in the write for the media or for the magazines. So I slowly began to pick up this writing skill and therefore became an influence in itself. All right. The other thing was that because I was so blessed when I went to digital marketing, training, and in business, all right, I can tell you the good Lord was so good to me. When you throw a diamond dozen, there are many people who are in digital marketing, but I was blessed with a sector. So when I taught specifically to the hospitality sector and the retail sectors because I used to be from that sector. So when I had these two sectors, right? And when you have hospitality, the other sectors that connected would be the travel, the tourism, yes, and even the cruise business. And I could talk about it. So when I say become a voice of influence, it was in my sphere of knowledge and people that I work with. And interestingly, those were also the areas, the industries that needed specific knowledge. And so I posted industry news and I made it a rhythm, like every week in my LinkedIn, I would post at least one tourism story, one travel story, or one hospitality story, and even one retail story. So that people can not just only know about my depressed story, but also know about the knowledgeable me. Okay? And this is how I built myself to become an influence via the internet, social media. The other way of being a voice of influence was finally connecting of people from online to offline. It should be the other way around, yeah? You see, when Singapore released or relaxed its restrictions about less than about 1.5 months ago, it was an opportunity to meet people. And just like there's revenge spending in retail, there was like a revenge meeting people, meet here, meet there, especially those who have connected a lot in LinkedIn. So you can see some of my posts. It's called online to offline. And that is magical because that's where new friendships come up. And that is where we build our network. Even in empowerment talks, ladies and gentlemen, if we can connect from online to offline, wherever possible, I can tell you this is where true network and true friendships can be formed. And in this pandemic world, we really, really need friends. Of course, I also took courage to run my own webinar, my own personal branding webinar. And it took a lot of learning, the process, the follow-up, and etc. And I think if we are stuck anywhere in our employment or unemployment situation or in our transition of jobs, it is a very good idea to first start with the social media, learn the ropes, and connect with people and run a webinar with your own expertise. The third thing I felt that was very important in this external influence, yeah, that was one I did in May, was to invest in hard projects. Do you remember I said that in the first year of my esteemed communications, I had no clients? I mean, I did. I had one shop selling cakes, right? Or typical delicacies. And I helped them with the social media. The other thing I did was just invest in hard projects. And I have particular love for arts and disability. And in Singapore, there's a group called the Very Special Arts Group. And as you can see, these are men who could, children, men, adults, all ages and all races in Singapore, they can draw. And this was an exhibition in which I helped them in the publicity. And I managed to do a video. Yeah, that's the other skill too, the other future ready skill. And I just made a video for them. And they were so happy. And, the joy to see them in the area of work that I could help them, the opportunity to talk to Raymond and to Edmund. So he became sponsored by a bank for his artwork. And I was just so happy to do publicity for them. So I think if we invest our time in hard projects to benefit people, the whole mindset shift will no longer be on ourselves. It will be on other people. And life is just so much more meaningful if we just invest in hard projects. So after all I've said about inner significance and external influence, how do we go about managing ourselves in this pandemic world? I think very importantly, we need to position ourselves. Positioning is a mindset, okay? But not only mindset to want to change, shift mentally, emotionally, skills, identifying the skills, and also to network. Position to conquer means you also need to have the resources to help you through. And that means I also had to work and save up to ensure I could go for all the courses. Somewhere down the road, we can get very discouraged because the pandemic is a very, very long haul. Yeah. And so the mindset shift is really needed. And if we persevere to win, okay, all right, we can. And the only way sometimes is to create your own opportunities. And I can think of Faisal and Yash, who have created empowerment talks and just spreading the influence of it to South Asia, Asia, to Europe, and Singapore, Australia too. I saw that. Wow. I mean, this is creating their own opportunities and watching it grow. And look at the team now. It's almost like a company by itself and just managed by 100 plus volunteers. I'm so proud of Empowerment Talk. So position to conquer, persevere to win. And my last point to you, really, ladies and gentlemen, is a matter of posture. We poise ourselves with grace. Yes, there will be anxieties, but really the disease and the pandemic within is far worse than the disease outside. So we need to posture ourselves with grace. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to open up now to you if you have any questions whatsoever, because if we position ourselves, if we persevere to win, and we posture ourselves with some dignity and grace, I believe we are able to overcome this pandemic world and by finding influence. So I want to hand this time over to Kainam. Maybe you have some questions, or maybe the audience has some questions. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I was listening your conversation very intently, and the way you explained, somewhere it resonated with me as well. And I am just sharing your social media platform details for our attendees. Ladies and gentlemen, you can know more about Sandra and her work, her contribution on this platform. Just now I shared in the chat box. And the talk, what you just concluded, Sandra, as I told you, it resonated with me, and I have some questions. And I request our attendees also to be ready with your questions. Either you can write in the chat box or you can directly ask Sandra. So my first question to you, Sandra, is that how challenging it was for you when you started the process of understanding yourself, because we kept on listening that there is a process of, just a moment. Sorry for that. Just be with me.
No worries. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for that. My question was, Sandra, is that how challenging it was to deep dive within and find out your limiting beliefs, which were stopping you to change the mind shift. What was the process? Would you please explain a bit?
The process was actually very difficult, and it requires a lot of perseverance, and daily mental battles. And I can tell you the daily battles, how they are, okay? I could just sit down and then the tears would just roll down. because it wasn't so much the financial stress. Yes, of course, all that in. Of course, I'm also blessed that my husband was working, etc. But the stress was so huge that the tears just rolled down, and it became psychosomatic. Do you know what it means? Soma means body, psycho means the mind. That I actually developed a terrible, terrible cough and reflux out of it. So I knew that the first thing I had to do was to get over the psychosomatic stage. Soma, I dealt with the health issue, got rid of all the gastric pains, got rid of the all reflux. It still comes, but it's not as bad as before. Got rid of this persistent cough, all right? That was psychosomatic. And then I just do the mind. Now, I would really like to say that sometimes being alone, doing yourself, the natural self, is not always easy and is not always possible. And that is why in one of my slides, I said that there's a process of connecting with your maker, yes, connecting with yourself, and then connecting with people, all right? It could be your closest significant person. It could be someone who is positive, all right? And after that, I would say try to treasure these people and build friendships which are really real now, ladies and gentlemen, because they're the ones who are going to help you, even though they sometimes think that they can't help you, but they give you a pat on the back. Sometimes I can tell you, a pat a day is worth it. It's still worth it. Okay. And I want to say too, because we're all staying at home, yeah? Toxic literature would also be very dangerous. Okay. And so I took effort. Yes, I took effort to memorize, whether I memorized scripture or whether I memorized good positive quotes. I'm one of those people. I love movies. I watch a few times and I memorize words. So I said, if I can do movies out of just sheer fun, why don't I do memorize good quotes that I can remember? So and that was one. And I remember Peter Drucker's, right? Create your future, create your future. And every day I would say, Sandra, create your future. And then I'll ask, how? I was like, do this. Okay, then pause. All right. So this daily process was just on and on and on. And I can tell you, Kanan, it is a battle, but those who persevere will come up as a champion. Trust me.
Thank you so much. I think it's quite powerful. My another question, Sandra, is you mentioned you connected with our Creator, the God. Most of us, we do, but we would like to know from you that what is your process of connecting and sort of surrendering, and what exactly you mean that? Because when I do connect, I don't know how powerfully I am connecting, but what I could learn from you is that the connection should be very strong, powerful, and there should be some action. So how do you do that, and how do you, and what's your meaning of surrendering and having conversation with God?
Thank you for a very deep question. As deep as it is, it comes from the word, the inner chambers. I think when you come to your own, you are alone in your own sanctuary. And then you invite your creator. And in inviting your creator, you are also trusting that the creator has everything in the palm. And this must come with trust, or else why connect with the creator? But it is not always true, because I always say, God, you're up there. How long? How long? How long is this going to be? Okay. So I get daily messages, whether you call it meditation or scripture reading or just breathing in, okay, saying a breath prayer, all right? I really want to say that this trust has to be there, the persevering of the trust. And surrendering my anxieties daily was an exercise I had to do. And in surrendering, the heart is uplifted. When the heart is uplifted, the mind is lighter. And in that process, ladies and gentlemen, is how you connect with the maker. Okay, I'm sure there are many ways. I'm sure many of you meditate in your own way. But having said that, in the process of meditating, I do not run away from the realities of life because that is here to stay. Rather, in the reality of life, I continue to engage in and say, is there a way out? So my daily prayers were, Lord, how long? How long? Have mercy and trust. I'm not sure whether that answers the question, but that is the process, the deep process I went through. But you can only do that if you go into the inner chambers of our heart and mind.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. I can understand. My other question coming to my mind is, it seems you also do practice to have awareness in the present, or being present in the present moment. So how do you do that so that you are aware of your thoughts, what's happening, and then what's the action you have to take?
I think you asked a very interesting question about being present, because one cannot be present if they have not found themselves. So in my whole process of finding myself, my worth, my skills, my strengths, things I had to do, mapped out, written out. Once I had that very clear, I had to put on the cap, right, of alertness. Because mindfulness is all about being alert in the present, right? So let me repeat that, okay? To be present, I had to first be very sure of my own self, strengths, significance, skills, network, significant people, and so on. Once I did that, because I can still be very absorbed in my own world, I need to put on the cap of alertness. When I'm alert of what's going on, then I'm mindful of the present. But that's just being mindful in a daily life. Being mindful and present with people means you need to have the external influence, the desire to connect with the other person. So I would say that how do I have the awareness of the present is when I have my inner self settled, put on alertness, and I look at people and say, now, how can I connect with you? And that to me is being present and being mindful. I hope I've answered you.
Yeah, thank you. So it's all about having complete understanding of self, complete understanding and clarity of where you want to reach, and then being alert, evaluating, and taking action and moving forward.
Yes.
That's wonderful. The
and then to
connect with the curator and the people. That's true. Now, I understand your journey was having full of challenges. So if you would like to share with our audience that what was the turning point, there must be some defining moment when you thought, okay, now this is what it is, I have to do this. So if you would like to share your that moment, the turning point, which really changed your mind shift.
Interestingly, I thought my first turning point was when I went paper chasing, right? So I said, oh, well, I needed to have some future ready skills, right? So I went to digital media, social media, analytics, NLP. I'm in the process of finishing up my ICF coaching certificate, etc. That in itself did not give me a lot of satisfaction. It didn't at all. So the turning point was when the headhunter said, now, what's the job of a headhunter? Help you find jobs, right? The headhunter said, I think you should stop looking for a job. Actually, he took a long time to give me the second half of the statement. He just said, you should stop looking for a job. Okay, forget it. And I was like, what? Headhunter? Don't you? What's a main role? Aren't you supposed to help me? Help me, because I'm the most deprived person in the world, at that point in time. But when he said, why don't you start a company yourself? And coming from a very sheltered environment, I said, well, that was going to be very tough because I have no blinking idea even where to sign up for a company. But that's the past now. Okay, that's about 5 years ago, and I have done all I needed to, and really, if the headhunter didn't tell me to start a company, I wouldn't have thought about it. So it's the same for this pandemic world. I think if there are no other opportunities, then you have to start it yourself and tread on the very amazing path called entrepreneurship. So that was my turning point. I think the headhunter, I should give him a gift one day.
So that's interesting. But if I have to ask you that, what was the best piece of advice you have ever received from anyone other than headhunter?
Apart from the headhunter, I think I read from a book. It's from a Filipino pastor, to be exact. You know, I think we have quite a lot of Middle Eastern people here, and including myself. I'm sure you love to drink tea. Yeah, of course. Yeah, chai. I love tea. Okay, and in tea, I found out the root of how I could have and should have changed my mindset. And what was it? Thinking affects your emotions, which then affects your action. So I talked about this mental daily battle, and that was just it. If you think right, then your emotions will be right. Once your emotions are right, your actions will then be right. So it's like a T principle, right? TEA. So I thought, this is a good summary of what significance is. Think right so that you can emote right, so that the right actions can come forth. And I would say that would be very important to me, apart from the headhunter. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. I learned something new about tea. Very good.
Yeah.
I'm a fond of, when you visit Dubai, we will offer you some special karak tea.
Yes, yes.
Very
My
good.
friends call me a
And
tea connoisseur. I love tea.
very good. So, do you inspire by yourself or someone else inspires you? Who inspires you, Sandra?
Who inspires me? In my life, I would say my late father was perhaps my greatest inspiration. Um, my late father was, he worked as an electrician, and for many years he was working in the University of Singapore as an electrician. So he said he knew every professor there. And yet, every day when there's where we lived, there was a person who collects rubbish, and it was usually an old gentleman. He would come and he would give them a cup of tea, literally. Okay. So I learned that we need to help the underdogs in life. That mattered a great deal to me. And the other thing I learned from my father was that he had a passion for children. And so my mom couldn't conceive, actually. So because of that, he adopted 6 children, and I'm one of the 6 adopted children. And we have lived happily together until, of course, he has passed away. But the real story I want to tell you is that he really had passion for the underdogs in life, and he would be my greatest inspiration, Carmen.
Wow, so inspiring. Wherever he is, he must be definitely proud of you.
Well, I would like to serve him tea again.
By the way, my other question is that if you had your time again, what would you do differently?
I wouldn't change anything.
Great.
I wouldn't change anything. I think if I hadn't stepped out of the government service, if I hadn't stepped out on the entrepreneurship, I wouldn't have even thought of significance. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. I understand what it means to be really low, financially, mentally, emotionally, and now I've come out stronger, a lot more, and I feel that this is the best time for me to share with people. So in this pandemic period, I find that this is the best moment that I can live for. I'm thriving and I am growing each day. So I wouldn't change anything at all, Kanan.
Very good. So going forward, you mentioned that when you started your journey, you learned the futuristic skills. Now, after pandemic, the people call it new normal or post-pandemic scenarios, all the digital world, etc. Uh, AI is coming up, and Internet of Things, all the transformative technologies. So, what do you suggest our attendees to acquire the futuristic skills? Where shall we invest our time on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I probably through the 167 episodes before this today, there will be a lot of emphasis on digital skills that are needed. And being a digital marketing trainer, I would say that will be very critical. That's for sure. And it will be not only normal, it will be the future for yourself, for your children and children's children. And I think that will be critical. But I think certain things don't change. And the ability to connect with people online to offline is a very special skill, right? I mean, it's still online via Zoom, but you know, the ability to connect still is an art by itself. And I would say that would be one way that we can make the world better for ourselves and for everyone else. So apart from all the essential AI, IT, digital, IoT skills that we need and we slowly embrace, I think we still need to go back to the real art of connecting with humans. Because I think without that, then what is the whole world about then? And this forms the second part of the influencing others. Yeah, it's the influence. Yeah.
True, true. Makes sense. The human connectivity, connecting the hearts are so important. So if I may ask Sandra, other than your work, all these challenges, managing your business and work and helping people, how do you unwind yourself? What is your process of your buzz moment or your me time?
Okay, right. So apart from jogging, I actually love to cycle. I love to cycle. So you can see me, I've been cycling. I hope to do more. It's just that, you know, a lot of restrictions here and there, but yeah, I make do. So I love to cycle, and that's when I can get to my own me time fighting against the wind, you know what I mean? For those who cycle, it's a great feeling. Yes. Yeah. That's my me time. And of course, I'm such a paradoxical person. I love to go to the kopi, what we call the kopi tea shops, coffee shops, yeah, in Singapore. I used to work in the cafes there. Work as in I used to do my own work, being a mobile person. Okay. And I want to say that the art of being silent in the midst of the noise is a special art that only few can treasure. So in my own quiet time, I love to be in those coffee shops. Yeah, that's my own private time.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And I really liked your logo of Signifluence, Sandra. Can you
Ah,
explain what is the purpose of putting I in a bit taller, and then L is taller than I, and line of U is tallest? What is the significance of this?
okay. I'll show you in my next slide. You're referring to this, right?
That's true, yeah.
That's right. Okay. That we are ever growing higher to
Okay,
higher height. That's what I meant.
okay,
Yes.
okay,
Ever
okay.
growing to higher heights. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you picked it up.
Yeah. And also, I liked your choice of colors because it seems when you are into the personal branding, the logo matters the most, as well as the combination or the selection of color. So
Yes.
even you observe that your personal appearance, your selection of your dress and all. So what do you suggest? What exactly one should focus on when someone has to start the personal branding?
it's back to the same thing. What do you like? What do you want to do? And what is appropriate? For me, I love purple color. So, for women, colors are very important. So, and I'm sure a lot of people here love purple too. So that is the way. I'm not a blue person. I can tell you, I'm totally not in the blues. I've had enough blues in my life already. So I want to be royal enough. Okay. And so I have various shades of purple. So by the way, the virtual backdrop was just done only yesterday. So yeah. Yeah. What do we go for? I think consistency. One can look very good in personal branding. That's true. That's important. But really, those are only the external things, all right? Really, the external things. If I really want to say what is really critical, I think particularly in social media, one has to be consistent, consistently there, consistently putting out what your skills are, all right? And be a thought leader. So this is my advice on digital marketing and social media. Really, one has to be consistent as a thought leader. One has to be consistent in the posting in the social media, and not just one, but a few. And the person itself is more critical than the form. Okay, the form is important, but it is not as critical as the person itself. And that is branding itself. Yeah.
Well said. Thank you so much. And I believe that our attendees have definitely enjoyed this conversation. And I must thank you for all your insights, powerful golden, I must say that golden nuggets and all the wisdoms. And I would like to ask, what is your experience coming on this empowerment talks and sharing your thoughts with all of us?
Well, actually, I must say, I'm so privileged, so very privileged to even be asked to join in. I was supposed to be in one of the earlier episodes, but I couldn't make it the last minute. But yeah, the experience meant that I had to craft out my story. You see, when you volunteer, you have to craft out a story. The story is my own. It's my own original story. Nobody can steal that from me. And the world is listening to it right now. So what is the experience? It's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're ever asked to speak, you must volunteer. Agree?
Thank you so much, Sandra. And I would like to thank you once again and all our viewers on YouTube and other social media and all our attendees and viewers on this Zoom talk. Thank you so much for your participation. And thank you, Sandra, for all your wonderful insights, your time, and your contribution. And further, going forward, I believe that there is a connectivity now between empowerment talks and with you and your organization, because I believe the purpose is same. The purpose is to empower people, help humanity. So looking forward for more interaction with you through empowerment talks, so that together we keep on serving the community, serving the humanity for betterment. So thank you so much. I'll just stop this conversation and then I will request my participant to ask question. Just give me 1 minute.
Sure.